I am director of Palestinian Media Watch. Palestinian Media Watch was founded in 1996. It was the beginning of the process, the Oslo process, the peace process between Israel and the Palestinians. And we wanted to know what was happening in the internal world of the Palestinian Authority. We knew what they were telling the media. We knew what they were telling negotiators. We wanted to know what they were telling their children. We wanted to know what was in the school books. We wanted to know what was on children's programming, because we believed that the key to peace is education. It won't come just by signing an agreement. And we wanted to know what the messages were from the Palestinian Authority to its people, and especially to its children, from all the different structures that the Palestinian Authority controls.
Yesterday you visited the parliament, Stortinget in Norway. What did you tell our top elected politicians?
Yesterday's theme was Palestinian teenage terrorists. We've been watching something really outrageous in Israel for over 10 years now, maybe even a little more, where there are so many Palestinian teenagers who are going on terror attacks. Some of them are even suicide attacks where they know they have no chance of survival. A 16-year-old with a knife will attack a group of soldiers, knowing that they're going to shoot him. We wanted to know what's going on in the mind of the Palestinian children. And we also are working with the assumption that a lot of these kids are good kids. And my question to the members of parliament about what is turning good Palestinian children into terrorists? Not the fringe, but the good kids. Last year there was a 17-year-old Palestinian who exactly did that. He stabbed an Israeli in the back and he was immediately shot. And when the Palestinian Authority wrote up his death, they wrote that he was an excellent student in the science track. And then you saw this boy lying on the ground after he was shot and he was killed. You saw the Israeli soldier who had the knife still in his back because he hadn't pulled it out. You had the picture. And our question was, why would a good student in science take a knife to school with him and on the way home give up his whole life? And that was our fundamental question. How do you turn good people? How does the Palestinian Authority turn good people and good children into thinking that by attacking and killing an Israeli civilian or a soldier, they're actually doing something honorable? This was the question that I posed to them, and of course I gave them the answers as well.
And how do they do that? How do they change their minds?
How do they change their minds? There are a number of very problematic messages that the Palestinian Authority gives its people. And what I showed to the members of parliament, I showed it as an ideology coming from political leaders and religious leaders, and then I showed it how it's transmitted to children. So I'll tell you, for example, the first fundamental message is that Jews are the major source of evil in the world. And I showed them a documentary from Fatah. This is Mahmoud Abbas's party that talked about the Jews built ghettos in Europe because in the ghettos they schemed how they would control and subjugate humanity, and that the anti-Semitism in Europe over centuries was because the Jews were trying to undermine Europeans, and it was just horrific. And this was one example, and I showed him many examples of this. And then I showed a children's cartoon that ran twice on Palestinian television, so we're talking it's a cartoon, we're talking it's for possibly 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 7-year-olds, and it's a story about the beginning of Islam. And there's this cartoon of this ugly, scary-looking Satan, and he's trying to destroy Muhammad. And what does he say? He's going to work with the Jews to destroy Muhammad because he knows how much hatred the Jews have in their hearts for Muhammad. And other vicious anti-Semitic things. So Palestinian Authority broadcast twice this whole message that Jews are connected with Satan and want to destroy Islam. We had the top religious figure in the Palestinian Authority go on TV, make a speech and a sermon, and he said that the conflict with Israel is not a new conflict. It's not about the territories of 1967. It's not about 1948, Israel's creation. He said it's the historic conflict between good and evil, and between the people who want good and people who are working for Satan. And then he said the Palestinians are Allah's project. Israel is Satan's project. That's what the conflict's about. So here you have a message coming from top Palestinian religious figures and documentaries, and then to children, that the Jewish people are the source of evil in the world. And then there are other messages. The Jews are trying to kill Palestinian children. The Jews are trying to kill Palestinians. The Jews are trying to destroy the Al-Aqsa Mosque. We're trying to destroy the holy sites. And then it goes on that the Jews have no right to exist as a state in Israel. They teach their people that there never was a Jewish history. We came because the colonial powers wanted to steal Palestine and get rid of their Jewish problem. And I'm giving you just a few examples. The child is growing up with these messages. These people are evil. These people are evil. I'm actually doing a service to humanity if I go and I kill an Israeli. That is the message for children. In addition to this, there's one final thing, is that whoever does succeed in killing Israelis becomes a Palestinian hero. So it's the fast track to being a hero in Palestinian society. I'll give you an example. 17-year-old female suicide bomber named Itamar Marcus blew herself up a number of years ago next to a supermarket in Jerusalem, killed 2 people, injured many others. If you go into a school in Bethlehem, and we put the picture, I showed the picture on the board for the members of parliament to see. You go into a girls' high school in Bethlehem, you'll see this big stone monument as you go in, and it's dedicated to the martyrs of the Intifada. Then it has 2 names. One of those names is the martyr Itamar Marcus. That's 17-year-old girl. So 17-year-old girls, when they go to school every day, are seeing that their role model is another 17-year-old girl who was a suicide bomber. You want to be a hero. And then there have been hundreds, if not thousands, of sporting events named after terrorists who've murdered. Dalal Mughrabi, who killed 12 children and another 27 adults in the worst terror attack in history when she and others hijacked a bus. She has 5 Palestinian schools named for her because she murdered 37 people. That's the only thing she ever did in life. She was in Lebanon. She came by boat, killed 37 people, 5 schools named after her, numerous sporting events named after her. Palestinian children get the message from everywhere that the heroic thing, the honorable thing, what Allah wants of you is to kill Israelis. And then you have good kids, not just the fringe. You have good kids waking up in the morning and say, I want to be a Palestinian hero. I want to do what Allah wants. I'm going to go out and kill an Israeli. And then you have a problem that we have where dozens and dozens of teenagers are going on terror attacks.
Which role does social media play in the mobilizations for riots and attacks?
A powerful role. A powerful role. And the worst of the social media is Fatah's media. Fatah, again, this is Mahmoud Abbas's political party. They have a Facebook page, which is one of the largest followings in the Palestinian Authority. It's got over 300,000 followers at this point. And all of these messages that I'm getting, for example, the message I told you about the documentary. Where did the documentary appear and where is it still today? The one that describes the Jews, that was produced by Fatah and it's on their Facebook page. And it's still there today if you want to go and see it. This evil message about Jews trying to subjugate all of humanity. Dalal Mughrabi, the terrorist, she's been honored numerous times. Every year on the anniversary of her terror attack, she's honored once again. Sometimes 4 and 5 different posts. Sometimes videos telling the story of her life. So children are going on to the Fatah Facebook page. And like I say, there are 300,000 followers there. And they're learning, this is what my society wants of me. This is what my people want of me. I want to be a hero. So social media is terrible. And we've complained to Facebook about this numerous times.
But in 2022 now, most people, also young people, have access to a wide range of information. Is it harder for the terrorist organizations to get out with their propaganda?
In Palestinian society, because it is completely controlled society, the Palestinian Authority writes the school books, they name the schools. I mentioned 5 schools after Dalal Mughrabi. There's another 27 or so schools named after different terrorists. They name the schools. A child can wake up in the morning and walk to school on a street named after a terrorist. He'll go into a school named after a terrorist. He'll then in the afternoon be a part of a football match named after a terrorist. He's getting it everywhere he turns. So the Palestinian Authority itself is the problem here. You asked about terror organizations. The Palestinian Authority itself is the driving force especially behind this organized terror of teenagers, when a teenager wakes up in the morning and takes a knife, this is because of the messages he's received from his schools and from everywhere else. I want to tell you a fascinating and tragic story. There are a number of Palestinians who we work with who are very interested in peace with Israel. They hate this education that the Palestinians are giving. They've spoken with me to members of parliament, and they say, I was brought up on this terrible hatred. You must do something to stop this. You're funding the Palestinian Authority, stop this, because you're ruining our future. And one of the members of parliament asked him, how many people share your views? And he answered, I don't know, because I'm afraid to tell people my views because I'll end up in a Palestinian prison. So he said, how many people know your views? And he counted, he said, maybe 5 or 6 people. I've been not afraid to tell my opinions to. So that's the real tragedy here, is that it's a completely controlled Palestinian society, even people who want peace. And he meets regularly with Israelis to try to build trust and to... He can't even tell his Palestinian friends, his relatives, because he's afraid he'll end up in a Palestinian jail. So that smothers any chance for any kind of an opposition that will actually be promoting peace with Israel.
I've read that Palestinian leaders, they have a long tradition of double speak, that they say different things to Western media than Arab media. Can you give us some examples?
I'll give you some great examples. So, first of all, the Palestinian Authority, when they come here to meet leaders in Oslo, they tell them, all we want is the West Bank, Jerusalem, and Gaza Strip, and then we'll have peace with Israel. Now, what do they tell to their people? They tell to their people, every bit of Israel has no right to exist. Every bit of Israel is an occupation. And they use the expression regularly, from the river to the sea. And I'll just give you a recent example. The Palestinian Authority the Palestinian Authority Ministry of Education posted on its Facebook page a picture, a gigantic map of all of Israel with the Palestinian areas. And on the map it said, our homeland, this land is ours from the river to the sea, Palestine. So that's the message, and that's one example. There was a number of girls who were asked to recite poems on Palestinian television recently, and one after the other, they had poems that had in it the expression, Palestine from the river to the sea. Palestine. Religious leaders, and this is very important, Palestinian Authority is a very religious society. The top religious figures in the country, people like Mahmoud al-Abbas, who's Mahmoud Abbas' advisor on religion, on Islam, he has said that all of Israel, that he calls it Palestine, but he's saying all of Palestinian land, which means Israel, is Islamic waqf, which means holy Islamic land that a Muslim is not allowed to leave in the hand of a non-Muslim, be it Christian, be it Jew, be it anyone. It has to be ruled by Muslims. In a different speech, he said that the Oslo Accords and the Oslo process is a temporary process, just like Muhammad, when he signed a treaty with the Quraysh tribe and promised not to attack Mecca for 10 years, and then he attacked 2 years later when he was strong enough. He said, that's our model. So you've got the top religious leader saying the goal has to be all of Israel because Islam demands it, and we're doing a process here to weaken Israel, to get more land, till we'll be strong enough. And that's our model. So the Palestinian Authority message to its people is all of Israel must be destroyed and will be destroyed. And the message to everyone else is, no, we're moderates, we want to live beside Israel, but that's a myth, and the people know it's a myth. Polls have shown, by the way, over 70-75% of Palestinians agree that their leader's goal is to get close to the six-day pre-1967 borders, and from there to continue to destroy Israel. I'll even give you one more example that's very important about this. A person named Abbas Zaki. He's one of the senior members of Fatah. He's on the Fatah Central Committee. He was on TV once, Al Jazeera, and he was asked about what are the goals, what's the vision for the future. He said, well, our vision is all of Palestine, meaning all of Israel. And then he says, and he said, and this is the president's vision as well, meaning Mahmoud Abbas. He says, but we're saying our political agenda is to get Israel back to the 1967 borders because everyone knows Israel can't survive those borders. And then he says at the end, very interesting, he says, you can say it to yourself, you can't say it to the world. But of course, Palestinian Media Watch was listening, and we did publicize it, and we showed it to the world. We said, understand, this is all a big facade. It's all a big game. Palestinian children know what their leaders want. Palestinian people know what their leaders want. The international community, and I say unfortunately, the leaders in Norway don't know what Palestinians want and don't know what they're driving for.
And how do they double speak about the monthly payment to the Palestinian prisoners?
So this is something very interesting. This is one of the few things that they are stuck with, that they can't completely lie about. They lie a little bit. They come to the Norwegian leadership and they say, these are stipends so that the families can be supported when their husbands are in prison. But it's not the case, because a Palestinian who steals an Israeli car doesn't get a stipend. He doesn't get a salary. A Palestinian who kills 10 Israelis and goes to jail, he does get a salary. And the longer he's in jail, the salary goes up. Eventually, he'll get 12,000 shekel a month. 12,000 shekel, just to give you an idea, is 4 times the average Palestinian salary. 4 times, 12,000 shekels, 4 times the average Palestinian salary. And that's what they get for going to jail for a long period of time. Again, if he stole a car, he gets nothing. So it's not in any way welfare for the families. That's the lie. They tell the Europeans, they tell Norwegians, it's welfare for the families. It's not. It's reward for terror. And we have had many, many Palestinian leaders say that it's a reward. In fact, the former minister of prisoners, when he was asked about changing it to welfare payments, he said, no, we won't belittle our prisoners by giving them welfare payments. These are heroes, and this is what they deserve.
Here in Norway, there are many friends of Israel. What can they do to spread the truth about what is happening in the country?
I think that the best thing the Friends of Norway can do will be to go to our website, Palestinian Media Watch. The website is palwatch.org, and get information. Get information. We have, by the way, over 100 videos with Norwegian subtitles. And now, thanks to work with our European representative who's here in Norway, Mette Johanna Falstad, we are having more and more things translated into Norwegian. We want this to be accessible and get the word out. Very often we find that members of parliament themselves don't know. I'll meet with members of parliament, meet with members of government. They have no idea what's going on. The members, the first time that I came to Norway with the information that the Palestinian Authority was paying salaries to terrorists, the foreign minister responded to the members of parliament in parliament and said that he checked with the Palestinian Authority and it's not true. They're not giving salaries to terrorists. We then produced a report which was called, Why is the Palestinian Authority Lying to Norwegian Leaders? We gave it again to the Norwegian media. The Norwegian media then brought it to the foreign minister, and I still remember the interview the foreign minister said on TV, yes, this information is true, I think it's wrong. They are paying salaries to terrorists. And then Norway tried to stop it, but you know what? It's been a joke. The Norwegian government continues to give money to the Palestinian Authority, a lot of money every year. They continue to tell them to stop paying salaries to terrorists. And the money keeps going. So that you've got Norwegian money going to the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority is spending about $350 million a year on salaries, which is more than all of Norwegian funding. So essentially, it's Norway, the European Union, and other countries who are funding the Palestinian Authority, who are enabling the Palestinian Authority to pay these salaries to terrorists.
One last question. If we disregard the COVID virus, is it safe to visit Israel now?
Yes, Israel is a very, very safe country to visit. We have an irritant of terror. Tragically, I'll say we lose many, many more people to car accidents than we do to terror, many more. So that terror it makes the headlines, but it's a very, very safe country. We have single digit to 10, 12, 15, I think last year was under 10 people killed by terror last year, and we can sometimes have that many in car accidents. So when you come to Israel, don't worry about terrorists, but be careful when you get in a car.
Itamar Marcus, thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you very much for inviting me.